Jacob here. Thank you all for coming to our live stream tonight. I'm so excited to be here with you to show you some of my techniques. I'm going to start out by playing two brand new tunes that I wrote specifically for this workshop in the last couple of days. And then afterward, we'll get cracking on how to break them down and learn them. We'll talk about we'll talk about some of the guitars that you can use to play them. We'll talk about some of the techniques that it needs to play them, and yeah, we'll get going. Just stumbling over my words here in the beginning, so we'll just go ahead and get cracking. This is study number 1. Then on to study number 2. I'm so stoked to teach you guys these songs. So here is study number 2. right, so those are the first two studies that we're going to work on together today. I'm really excited to teach those to you. Believe it or not, it only takes about 4 or 5 techniques to really get these under your belt. So that first study was called, I'm just calling it Groundhog. I just wrote it yesterday, and at that point I was kind of feeling like I was in like a steady, slog of just doing the same thing every day. So that was pretty fun, get funky. Second one I'm going to call Float, because I had a similar day before, and I actually kind of liked it. It was good to be in a routine. So today what we're going to do is talk a little bit about those techniques that it takes to play these two studies. The first study was a study in slap guitar. The second was a study in body percussion and tap harmonics. The things that we'll go over today, I'll get there soon, actually, and then we'll talk, too, about different guitars that you can play this style on, some of the people that you can turn to listen to, some of the musicians out there that are playing. And I also just wanted to toss it out there and say thank you to Nick at Bellinghome School of Music for doing this awesome live stream for me. He's doing a great job here. And if any of you musicians or bands or teachers out there are interested in coming into this place and doing a live stream like this, hit Nick up, because he's the guy you want to go to. All right, so I just want to toss it out there. If you guys have any questions about influencers in this field or guitars in this field, we'll talk in more depth later, but I'll just throw it out there right now that some of my favorite artists are Antoine Dufour and Andy McKee, Don Ross. This style has been pioneered over years, decades, and even centuries, dating back to flamenco guitar playing. So we're really lucky to be a part of this tradition. So what we'll do right now is actually just get started on study number 1. No, back up a little bit. We're actually just going to talk a little bit about how to turn our guitar into a drum kit, right? So I'm lucky to have a drum kit right over there. See a kick drum, some toms, a few cymbals, a snare. We can translate those sounds on our guitar relatively easily. So the first thing that we want to do is get our sounds in our head, right? So if you hear a kick drum, it's that big thunk, thunk sound that we want to hear. Generally, I like to get that on the lower bout or on the upper bout with my wrist. You can listen like this. Right, pretty nice. And then here. Not bad, right? Pretty easy, okay? Other places we can get, the next thing that we can go to is getting the snare drum down, which we can get down here on the lower bout side, or on the upper bout side, or even on the upper bout face of the guitar. Trevor Gordon Hall taught me this one where you can just slap the upper bout face with your middle or index finger. We can also get that same sound down here on the lower bout sides. That's a pretty handy trick that we can use. The next thing that we've got is the hi-hat. How do we get that hi-hat sound? It's actually kind of a confusing one. So we got to kind of think about what the hi-hat does, and generally it fills in the larger pulses, right? So if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, right? So generally the hi-hat here is just my left hand tapping the strings. Another way I like to do that to fill in the subdivisions of the beat is to actually mute the strings and pluck with each of my fingers. Something like that. We'll get into how to use that in study number 1. Okay? So after the hi-hat, we have the toms and the crash cymbals. So those are filler notes, right? So the toms we can get down here generally with like a rasgueado technique, which is a flamenco technique. That kind of flavor. It's a little intense on the strings, but what we can do is actually use that on the lower bout of our guitar. Gonna see some scratches over here eventually, but we can also get that same effect if you don't want to scratch up your guitar by using those same 3 fingers in the opposite direction on the side, and you can get these kind of sounds. Those kinds of rolls are super fun to do once you get used to those rasgueado techniques. I will say the way to do that, the way to practice that is to not to go straight for the triplets or the sextuplets, but is to slow each finger down. 1, 2, 3, and just, dude, get your metronome on. You're gonna hate me for saying it, but get that metronome on and try it out, and then jump up to triplets, triplet, triplet, and 16th notes. That one's tricky, and so on and so forth, right? All right, and then the crash cymbal we can kind of achieve using the tap harmonics, which is something you saw me do in study number 2, okay? So we can get that kind of splashy effect using harmonics, right? If you're unfamiliar with harmonics, basically all we're doing is dividing the string in half, in quarters, in half, in thirds, and in quarters. And you can get those natural harmonics by plucking through the 12th fret, not pressing down on the 12th fret, but just laying your finger across. Okay? So the cool thing about this is that we can actually use our right hand to get that same effect by rearing our hand back. Oops, that wasn't a great one. Rearing our hand back and just attacking the fret right on top of the fret at the 12th fret or the 19th fret. This is generally where we're going to get our best sound. The 17th fret, the 19th fret, the 7th fret are identical in pitch, which is very helpful. So we can get this note right here on the 19th fret. That's also a very, very nifty trick that we can do. Another thing that I learned from one of my classical guitar students, actually, you saw me kind of rearing back and kind of jolting up for this big hit. Something that my classical student told me, they said they're just sitting kind of in front of their TV, just tapping just to kind of keep a beat. And what they were doing is getting this, I don't know if you can kind of see that, they're getting kind of this springboard effect, you know, layering their index finger on top of their middle finger and pushing until it falls through, right? So that's a really handy tip to especially be really precise with all of this as well. Really handy tip to kind of get that crash cymbal feel. So in that case, we've got our kick drum down here, our snare drum right here or up here. We have our hi-hat on the muted strings, our crash cymbal on the tap harmonics, and then our toms with the raschiato and the rolls on the bottom of the guitar. So it's a lot of information, a lot of raw information. So how do we process that into a song? That's when we'll actually pull up study number 1. I've got 4 or 5 exercises for you to get cracking on this funky little tune. And hopefully have you playing that by the end of tonight. And if not by the end of the night, you can practice it for a little while and see how you feel. So let's go ahead and get study number 1 pulled up. For those of you who are interested in learning the whole song, today I'm really just going to take you through maybe the first page or so. It's about 4 pages long, lots of good music. Oh, lots of people talking. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, I got to learn to look up and see things. All right. See Joy. Thank you for all of that. Seeing lots of compliments from Joy and Howard and Tom. Oh, Tom. Bro, give me some depth. Never. With these rich chords. Oh, man. Thank you all for checking in. David, it's great to see you. Summer, Tudell, I saw you in here. You and Ian. What's up, Ian? Good to see you guys in the chat. And again, thank you all for tuning in. It's great to see you here. So I'll try to keep my eye on the chat more often, talk to you guys a little bit more, get so wrapped up in my own thoughts over here. All right, so study number 1, Nick has that up on the page, or up on the screen right now. So the first thing that we're going to do is get cracking. Actually, I got to get it up for me, or get it over on the screen for me as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is just get a basic backbeat rolling, which means we're going to play a snare hit on beats 2 and 4, and we're going to play a bass note on beat 1, and that's it. So if you look at the tab, you see 0 and then X. That X stands for a thumb slap. I think I mentioned, or a string slap. I think I forgot to mention that in the snare hits, but that's one thing that we can do is take our thumb, come down and attack the frets right at the string, okay? One way that I like to do that, I see a lot of people kind of take their whole fist and kind of attack the strings like this. What I like to do is be a little bit more gentle, plant all 3 of my fingers down on the lower strings, and then just use this muscle in my palm to just attack the string from there. That way I have a controlled sound each time. Scotty, hello, welcome to the chat. What's going on, man? Good to see you. Kind of good to chat with you. So we're talking about warming up study number 1 right now. Groundhog is what I'm calling it. We're doing string slaps and adding a very simple bass line. So here's what it's going to sound like. You're welcome to play along with the tab if you want. We got exercise A up, or the warm-up A on the screen right now. So here's what it'll sound like. I'm going to play this 5 times. You guys can jump in on the second and play it 4 times with me if you'd like. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1 more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I think on the tab it says to stop with an A. That's to kind of get you prepared for the piece a little bit, so you can practice that as well. All right, that's exercise A. Moving on to B down here. We're gonna just forget about the muting for just a second so we can get our left hand ready for what's going on in the bass line. I try to keep this bass line pretty simple. There's a little bit of syncopation happening on beats 2 and 3, but it's syncopation I think you guys are used to hearing. Sounds kind of like triplets, but really it's a dotted 8/16 syncopation pattern. And I'm kind of outlining the lower part of a G major chord. It's gonna sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I'm gonna play it with a little bit more grit. I think I'm gonna throw my palm down here and get some palm muting going on and play each note a little bit shorter. That way it kind of punches a little bit harder. And I'm gonna play it 4 times so you guys can join in with me if you want. Same tempo, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Let's go through it one more time. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and we're done. All right. It's hard to like get out of counting rhythm. I feel like I'm speaking in rhythm if I just get in that steady 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're done. All right. So now we're going to just add that backbeat back in. So we've learned the backbeat, we've learned the bass line. Now we're going to combine them together in exercise C. So if we get exercise C up, that's going to help us read through it. And you'll notice at the end there, I've got 2 A7 chords that have a down-up strumming cymbal on it. So all that is a common technique that Don Ross, I know Don Ross uses a lot, and Andy McKee uses a lot. So what that means is we will come down for a string slap and at the same time use our index finger to do a down strum and then another up strum. I see some people use their middle finger or their index finger. It's kind of whatever they want to use. So that's at the end of part A. So now let's do exercise C to get rolling. It'll sound like this. You guys can play along. 1, 2, ready, go. 1. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty nice, right? We're getting lots of forward momentum in this. It feels really good to kind of add that backbeat in and get some syncopation going on these bass lines. It feels really nice. All right, so the next part is where things get a little bit tricky. You're going to see I've notated an X in parentheses and an X outside of the parentheses. That X outside of the parentheses is just our regular backbeat, that thumb muting that we're doing here. The one inside of the parentheses is kind of the hi-hat that we're going. I don't think in traditional drum notation that's how they notate the hi-hat. Didn't really do my research on that one before I wrote it down yesterday, but that is going to be our hi-hat cymbal. It's going to sound a little bit like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. One more time. Okay, right? So I'm going to talk about that one for just a second because I think that's a technique that some of us are going to have to get used to, right? Which is just simply playing an open note and then muting it lightly with our left hand to where we're not actually pressing down on the strings, but we're just resting our fingers on the strings. And it's going to be pretty easy on the acoustic guitar. Our strings are always like falling or like so high up off of the fretboard. It shouldn't be too difficult to get that going. Okay, so then we're gonna go, when we get back into the exercise, we'll play 1, index, thumb, index, thumb. So 1, 1. Okay, so that's something that can help us get that part going. All right, so then we actually get into the real song, and what's going to happen here is we're going to just add chords to everything that we've done so far. So we'll go into exercise E. It's the beginning of page 2 here, and yeah, so we'll play the regular bass line and the backbeat just like we're used to playing, but this time just before beat 2, we're going to add an open E minor chord, just 3 open strings at the bottom. No problem, 1, 2, and 3. And is right before beat 2, so we'll see how that feels. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Okay, so that was E, and then the line below it, you can kind of see. We can do that a couple of times. I'm actually just going to stick to exercise E, just those 2 bars for a second, and help you guys kind of get through that. I'm going to play through those 2 bars twice, so 4 total bars. You guys can try to play along with me if you'd like to, and yeah, let's give it a shot. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Pretty fun, right? So I would definitely get on practicing with that open chord. Nick compared it to a horn section earlier, and I really dug that. So I think I'm gonna call that this section that I'm gonna teach you guys here in a second, the horn section. So I'm only gonna go over this briefly because we're about half an hour in, and I wanna make sure you guys get plenty of love on the other piece too. But you'll see in the next section, bar 19 or so. No, actually it'd be on page 3. Yeah, at the beginning of page 3, you'll get some chords up high that are syncopated off the beat, just off the beat. And these are pretty basic chords. If you're familiar with like your F major chord, for example, we're using that same shape. F minor as well, which would just be the bar on the 1st fret without your 2nd finger. So what we'll do, oh, sorry, that was the wrong fret. Start that chord up on the 5th fret. That'll give us an A major chord. And then we'll chord plane down, which just means to slide the same shape down to the 3rd fret. And then we're going to go from the 3rd fret down to an F sharp minor on the 2nd fret. It's just a straight bar on the 2nd fret. And then we'll just open that back up to an E minor. And then eventually I go down to somewhat of a B minor 6 chord. Super beautiful, but just this part of the chord. So what we end up getting is 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. Sounds super nice. I love that. I love that. I can just actually picture the horns in my head, like just throwing that one out there. It sounds so fun.
Measure 23?
That is measure 23, yeah. Beginning of page 3.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I'll play through that again, just so you guys can kind of see how, and I'll actually fill it out too, so you can see all the bass line going, or all the, yeah, so you can see the bass line going through. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Oh, love that. All right. I'm actually forgetting a note. This whole there's a hammer on just before that A7 chord. Where do I start here? So on bar 25. Rise coming in. I am not a musician or a magician. A musician? I could be a musician. Is that a word yet? No, not a word yet. Thank you, Rye. Thanks for tuning in. Loving these horns too. Howard's chiming in. What's up again, Howard? Indeed. So, yeah, so that's just kind of something to give our piece a little less of a focus on the bass and the rhythm and kind of start to put something a little bit more melodic in there, right? So we're building from the ground up, as you can see from A, B, C, D, E, and then this section right here. We're starting from just a very simple bass line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, getting all the way to this. super fun, right? All right, so.
I have a question quick.
Yeah.
Can you break down measure 26 and I want to have the camera close up on your fretboard?
Oh yeah, that's something I actually haven't talked about. It's that slide, right? That hammer on pull, or not the hammer on pull off.
Yeah, it seems like people would appreciate that.
Thank you for bringing that up. So Nick is bringing up measure 26, and sorry everybody, I'm just kind of getting excited about the music over here. I'm just moving so quickly. Okay, so all that's happened in bar 26 is an A7 chord, right? If you're familiar with your open A7 chord, it's just a 0, starting on the 5th string, 0, 2, 0, 2, 0, okay? And if you're seeing the music right now, actually we don't need to check out the, yeah, we can check out the music, and you can kind of see that crazy like small 3 in there that moves straight back down to the 2nd fret. Basically, all I'm doing here is a really tricky way to do, or, wow, getting all my words twisted up here. All I'm really doing is sliding up to the 3rd fret and sliding back down to the 2nd fret. And then pulling off to the open strings. So you get something like this. I'll count it off. So 3, 4, and boom. If you do that really slow, and actually, I think earlier in the piece, you can even do it without the like upward and downward neighbor tone kind of thing. And you could just start from 3 and go 1, E, and a 2, and 1, E, and a 2, and one more time, 1, E, and a 2, and. So all of that is slurred. You'll notice that with the curled line underneath in the music. And then we have that strumming technique that we talked about earlier, which is really helpful. So yeah, that part's probably the trickiest, but also hookiest part in the whole thing, and I really like that part a lot. So I would practice that, just get the funk in there. And that's kind of all I really want to go over with study number 1. Like I said, y'all, if you're really into wanting to play this whole piece, we can shoot you the music if you drop us a donation for $10. That'll really help us here at the school. It'll really help us to continue making this really high quality content. And you'll get about 8 pages of music out of it as well, which is really exciting. I spent a few days this week just getting this all together. Just really stoked to share it with you all. So yeah, you'll get some of that. And I think with that, we can probably move into study number 2. Why don't we go ahead and do that? Let's get that pulled up, and we'll talk about some of the chords and some of the percussion that's going on there. So I'm just going to get started with the left hand here, because the chords here are hopefully pretty basic. I think they're pretty familiar chords to what most of you might know, and if not, we're only using 3 fingers, so hopefully we can get started there. So there we are on the first bar. This first chord is called a C major 7/G, which is kind of a fancy way to say C major. Hopefully he doesn't smack your guitar around too much. I was literally, thanks Joy, I was literally telling Nick today, Rye, about the story of me getting on stage and playing my tune Danza and getting so excited. I actually don't know if you guys can see this. Right about there. You see those 2 little parallel lines? That crushed my soul that night when I realized I was too hard on this girl here. So, or boy, who knows? It's a guitar. But yeah, I definitely got really aggressive that night and cracked it. But Rye was very chill about it, and Rye was very chill about it, and he just went back in there and supported it. And yeah, I don't know how he fixed it, but he did. So that's kind of another thing with percussive guitar. You got to be kind of light. I think a lot of people get really tense and then just like bang their guitar. Actually, I've seen some guitarists bang their guitars just so intensely that they have kind of busted through it. But we'll talk about what guitars are best for that later on. All right, so let's get into study number 2. The first chord here is basically a C major chord, like I mentioned just a second ago. Okay, what I'm going to do instead is lift up my index finger to make it a C major 7 chord. Alexander, thanks for chiming in. We appreciate it. And yeah, I saw you downstairs. I didn't get the chance to say hey. And then, so we'll move our 3rd finger from there to the 3rd fret of the 3rd string, and then we'll put our pinky down on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. Okay, so this is kind of what our chord looks like right off the bat. An easier way to play this is to switch up our fingering and use our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 5th string, and then middle finger on the 3rd fret of the 6th string. And this is a really handy chord. We're actually going to do something called chord planing here, which basically means to take the same shape of a chord and move it around the fretboard. We're going to take this from 2nd position, 3, 3, 2, up to 5, 5, 6, or 5, 5, 4. And then we'll take that same chord down to the 2nd fret. Just 3 basic chords. And that's basically it. And I like to, since we're going to really focus less on plucking specific strings, we're actually just going to do the entire thing. On that last chord, I like to add my pinky to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string to just kind of even out the quality of that chord. So why don't we practice those chords maybe twice through, all right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, up 2 frets, 4. 1, 2, back down to the original chord, 4. 1, 2, add your pinky to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, 1, 2, 3, one more time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and we're done, right? 3 very simple chords that make your guitar sound so beautiful, very rich. 2 triads stacked on top of each other, basically a C major chord on an E minor chord, and then a D major chord on an E minor chord. Just, so buttery and delicious. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, I also wanna point something out on the music. If Nick, you could get that first part pulled up one more time. Down in the tab, you're gonna see lines connecting our notation. That basically just means to move the same shape of fingers up and down the fretboard. And if you look closely enough, those lines are connected to specific fingers. The main 2 fingers that you'll be shifting back and forth are your 3rd and 4th, or your 2nd and 3rd fingers. Like that, it kind of sounds like Bowser's Castle in Super Mario or something. I don't know, whatever, I'm getting distracted. So what we're gonna do now is add percussion. So if you look at the middle line of the music here, you see a triangle up top and then a square down bottom. That's just to indicate a sharp, high-pitched snare and then a low, boxy kick. The most basic way that we can understand this rhythm is the backbeat that we laid out basically in study number 1. So we're gonna do a snare on beat 2 and a kick on beat 1. Really standard stuff. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also do it on the upper bow. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Both sound great. I actually think for this study, I think I played it with a little bit of both. For this study, it's nice to play that kick snare pattern on the upper bout because you're going to be strumming chords and playing tap harmonics up here anyway. And then if you want to change of timbre later on, we can go down to the lower bout and get some like sharper, boxier tones. So what I'm doing with this pattern is adding a little bit of forward momentum by adding a 16th note just before beat 3. So it's going to sound something like this. 1, 2, a 3, 4. That's it. Let's do that a few times. Ready? Go. 1, 2, a 3, 4. Rest. 2, a 3, 4. Rest. 2, a 3, 4. Rest. Rest. What am I saying, rest? I'm getting kind of fancy with my waves. I wanted to try something because I was looking at the camera and getting distracted. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Really basic, really basic backbeat there. So now we just have to add the chord on beat 1, and we get something like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then here, I changed it up a little bit. If you've ever seen any jazz drummers play with brushes where they're just kind of rolling the brush around on the snare, you get this shh, shh, shh kind of sound. I tried emulating that, and actually I learned this from a guitarist named Antoine Dufour, who's kind of the leader of the pack in the fingerstyle guitar world, has been for 10 or 15 years now, I feel like, from my opinion anyway, where he kind of rubs his wrist against the face of the lower bout. So what I'm doing there is snare, 2 kicks, and then 2 brush strokes, basically. And you can see that in the notation if we look over at the tab really quick. If you ever need that in the notation, that's indicated by the curled line underneath beat 3. So that's going to, it basically looks like a tie or a slur, but that's indicating to brush on those beats. So we get something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Right? So it's a very subtle effect, but if you're playing quietly and if you're playing for a small group of people, or if you're just playing for yourself, that's a really sweet thing to kind of add a little bit of momentum to your pieces. All right, then the next thing we got to do is add our harmonics, our tap harmonics. Those are going to go in on beat 4, so it'll sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Let's do it again. 3, 4. Oops. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. I will say I did something there that I didn't agree with myself, actually, which was I was kind of mixing my patterns in the same 4-bar phrase. Basically, each line of the music that you're looking at, I would stick to one or the other just to keep your sound consistent. Otherwise, it feels like pouring too many colors into the same painting. You know what I mean? And then on the 3rd line, I don't really do that much different. All I'm doing, again, is adding a little bit more forward momentum by adding an upstroke before the string slap. So it sounds something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then at this point, I choose to kind of drive up to the 7th and 8th fret with the same shape that I've been using this whole time. I add my pinky to the 8th fret of the 2nd string and get an F major 9/C to kind of build the tension into this new strumming section that I'll talk to you about in just a second. So we'll actually leave the music at the bottom of page 1 of study number 2 here, and I'll show you how to play this strumming pattern as well as continue the backbeat. So if we're up there on, so what we'll do is play a relatively straightforward strumming pattern. It's just down, 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 up, down, and then what I'm going to do is add that basic backbeat behind it just to keep that momentum rolling. So we get 1, 2, again. Love the way that sounds. You're noticing too that maybe I'm using 2 fingers to back up here. That's just the way that I like to strum. You can always do a down-up strum to replace that. The main thing that we're kind of noticing here is, you remember in study number 1, we did that kind of down-up strum with the slap, and that's kind of the same thing that we're doing with this strumming pattern. Let me get back up to that chord, and we get something like this. I'm knocking the guitar up here and strumming on the way back down. So you can see it one more time. And then we get into the big release of this short little tune. So that's actually all I'm going to go over with on study number 2, because the second page is more of the same. It's just different chords, different. That's basically it, different chords, and that's kind of the thing that I want to like shout out to you guys for is that you can take some of these techniques, some of these basic backbeats, for example, like this 1, 2, 3, 4. Add any note that you want to. It's yours to play with. Same thing with this study here. If you really like this backbeat, add different chords to it. See what kind of colors and flavors you like. Try to keep it simple because this multitasking takes time to get used to. So stick with chords that you're familiar with, but chords that you know that you like, and give all of it a shot. So I think that kind of wraps up the workshop portion of the workshop. So I have a couple of other things that I could talk about, but I really want to open up questions to you all. So if you have any questions about what styles of guitar it takes to play this style of music, or what styles of guitars are good for this style of music, or what artists to go listen to, I'd love to hear what other questions you guys have. So until kind of some of those questions come through, I'll just go ahead and kind of start talking. I kind of have a list over here of like instruments that I really like. I'm definitely going to give my man Rye, who's in the chat, a shout out for this guitar. But for those of you who are looking to get something a little bit more basic for your percussive fingerstyle guitar needs, you can get something pretty solid for a few $100s, maybe $500 or so, that will really hold up for you. Generally, factory guitars are really sturdy, and laminate guitars and even some of the solid top guitars are really good. I would say there are 3 different body shapes of guitar that work really well for this. Most of you probably have a dreadnought guitar, which is kind of your standard country chords, like large lower bout guitar. Those work fine for this style of guitar. I don't quite prefer it because the tone quality of the notes tends to kind of get a little thinner as I go up the neck. So things that I like to use for a little bit more clarity are OM models and triple O models, which this is a triple O. You can also use concert auditorium models or jumbo models that have big bouts. Generally, what you want to make sure of is that you're not just limiting yourself. It's more of a left-hand thing, honestly. You just want to make sure you're not limiting yourself to the lower reaches. And Howard's chiming in. He says, if you have a fairly light touch to begin with, will it matter what guitar you use? No, not really. The guitar is all about your preference, right? So we can talk a little bit about what Dreadnought does, what concert auditorium does, and what triple O does to the sound. I know a little bit about it just from having played each one. And Howard, I think you've got a Dreadnought, that really beautiful red Dreadnought. So I think it really doesn't matter. And in fact, you kind of have a little bit of an advantage because you have more room to play with like the kick and the snare down there. Having a light touch definitely makes the notes up in the higher registers sound a little bit cleaner, because I think that's a part of the problem is having a real heavy hand on those notes can kind of splat out. But generally, no, I think you're all set to go with your Dreadnought over there. I think it's going to work wonders for you. So yeah, and as far as like brands go, pricing low to high, I would say Takamine is pretty good. You can get like a solid guitar for a few $100, $500 or $600, and you can even get up into the $1,200 range and get a really nice fingerstyle guitar. I tend to prefer brands more like Seagull and Larrivee and Taylor. They get a little bit pricier at that point, but to me, when you're trying to play this style of music, it's really worthwhile to do so, to spend just a little bit more money. And then if you really want to start kind of getting into the craft guitar area, Loudons are beautiful. And then there are a few luthiers in town, actually. 2 here in Bellinghome that I know. And then obviously Rye, who is in the chat right now, who's living up in Vancouver right now, who built this guitar. The other 2 guitarists is Walker Van Wingerden. What is it? Van Wingerden. Got it. Walker Van Wingerden. I used to work with him at Guitar Center back in the day. He was doing tech work there. Now he owns his own shop, has his own place, and is doing luthier work here in Bellingham, and I think builds pretty brilliant guitars. So you should go check out Walker. You should also check out Dick Traffigan, who is here in town. I've played a couple of his guitars. He's been in the game for a really long time. And I just want to talk a little bit about this guitar, Rise guitar. This is a Concert Triple O. If we can maybe get the GoPro on this to kind of show it off a little bit. So this guy is beautiful shape. It's got a deep cutaway, 14 fret right here, and then cuts away pretty far into the fretboard, 19 frets. The story I always like to tell with this is the story I received from Rye. He used to live in Australia and harvested an Australian blackwood tree to create this like kind of maplewood back inside like finish. That wood just has the same quality to it. You can kind of see it on the sides as well. And then he came over to the Northwest and used the Western red cedar, the abundance of Western red cedar that we have up here, to create this top. And obviously, like my favorite thing about aesthetically anyway, my favorite thing about this guitar is this beautiful rosette. I was watching you, Rye, do that one day, and I still kind of didn't get it, how you were doing. You were going through the whole process, and it was just brilliant. I thought it was the coolest thing. So yeah, this is a beautiful guitar. You should check out Rye on Instagram and all of the other platforms. He's got a great website, and he's doing really big things with his luthierships right now. So as far as artists go, we could talk a little bit about that. There are international artists, lots of people at the top of the food chain, thousands of people in the middle of the food chain, and then lots of locals who are kind of on both sides of the food chain. As far as local people go, you guys should go check out Sean Hall and Don Alder. So Don Alder's from up in Vancouver. Sean Hall's from right here in Bellingham. He and I are good friends. We get together pretty frequently and play a lot of good fingerstyle music. He's released music with Candy Rat Records. He's toured all over the country. He was in the music industry as a touring artist for 15 years. Legit. He writes incredible music. Don Alder has a TED Talk on percussive guitar that he released 10 years ago or so that has something like 1.5 million views. And then as far as like sort of the bigwigs that I've been listening to for a long time, you guys should check out Antoine Dufour, Andy McKee, Stefano Barone, Pino Forestieri. I don't think I said that right either, Forestieri. Obviously like Michael Hedges, Phil Keggy. These are some of the guys who kind of pioneered the style back in sort of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And you're kind of thinking about this slap guitar as well, this first one that we did. Oops, I didn't prepare for that. And you see a lot of people on the bass doing that kind of thumping, and even the electric guitar. And there are three guys that I'm always thinking about. You got Victor Wooten, obviously, Tosin Abasi from Animals as leaders, and then there's a guy named Michael Manring who plays a fretless bass that has an adjustable bridge and tuning pegs, which means he can just flip his his bridge up and his strings tune up half step, and he can do that with each individual tuning peg. It's wild to watch this guy play. So Michael Manring, go check him out. Tosin Abasi is writing some pretty intense like jazz metal fusion on the guitar. Victor Wooten obviously is kind of the big man in the bass guitar world. And that's kind of it, guys. Talking about guitars, talking about guitarists, and talking about how we all do it. It has been really awesome. If anybody doesn't have any questions, we can, I guess, keep it open for a minute and just see.
Yeah, maybe you want to play one of your originals.
Ooh, dang.
And we can wait for questions.
Yeah, I'll just kind of noodle around for a little bit. Walker, what's up? You are welcome. WSV Guitars. Thanks for tuning in, man. It's good to see you. Good to chat with you, I guess. I was going to say good to see you, but I can't see you. Crazy. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so I'll actually play one that you guys probably heard back in my live stream. Can you tell us a bit about lettered streets? Kevin, are you wondering more about the technique of lettered streets or the story of lettered streets? That's what I'm wondering, because I can definitely talk about both. Why don't I just talk about both? Yeah, so Lettered Streets was a tune that I wrote when I moved back to Bellingham. I kind of had this little idea. But I didn't know where to go with that. It was just like a riff. And when I came back down to Bellingham back in June, I started meeting up with my buddy Sean Hall, who I mentioned earlier. And about once a month or twice a month, we would get together at his place in the Lettered Streets neighborhood of Bellingham and just trade tunes. And it was super exciting and really fun. And after like 6 months of COVID and just sitting in my room doing nothing, it felt so good to just come back to a city that I love and meet up with a cool guy and play good music. So then that whole tune just after a few days just kind of started opening up, and that was really great. So I call that tune Lettered Streets. I love that song so much. And this groove, this... I could play that groove for days. I don't know what it is about it that feels so good. But as far as the technique goes, at least on that part, it utilizes a lot. I actually appreciate you bringing this up, Kevin. It utilizes a lot of the techniques we talked about today, specifically the string muting. If we want to get on that GoPro view, you can kind of see what's happening there. So I'm just doing a tapped note, which, by the way, I will cover in our next workshop, how to do hammer-ons, tapping, and all that. I'll bring that up a little bit later. Tapping on the G string, or on the G note, 6th string. And then just doing a 4-finger roll on the 6th, 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings. The really important thing about this is to have all 4 of your fingers planted. That way you're just ready to go. So tap, pluck, 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 pluck. That sounds crazy. And then I tap again on the 5th fret of the 5th string. And then I'll do a string slap. Then I'll come down. Then I start opening up. I kind of start opening up, peeling back that finger a little bit to get some melody notes in there. Instead of muting the open G, I'm actually playing it. I've actually thought about adding some harmonics in there too. Love that stuff. So much fun to get multiple layers going on with that percussive technique. So generally when I'm writing this kind of music, since nobody's kind of asking any other questions, I tend to start with something rhythmic. I really love playing around with groove, right? So when you get this, okay, well, what can we do to make that a little bit more interesting? Maybe add another hammer on. That didn't sound so good, so let's pick a different note. The G major triad, right? 1, 5, 3. Going down to the flat 7, F major. And then kind of when you're messing around like this, that was just a little bit of a tricky, like, I don't know, just kind of came out. I didn't actually mean to hit that open G. I was like, I'm going to keep that. So sometimes you make a mistake that actually works really good, or really well. Keep it. Do it intentionally. And I've been writing a lot of music in standard tuning these days. For those of you who are kind of keeping up with what I'm doing, I'm working on some new music for a new album, and I'm trying to write almost all of it in standard tuning, whereas Migration was many, many different tunings. I'm trying to learn standard tuning a little bit better, and one tonality I'm kind of falling into a little bit more often is major and minor 9 arpeggios, or major and minor 9 chords, right? So where you have your normal A major chord, bar chord on the 5th fret, all you got to do to make that a little bit more colorful is, painstakingly stretch our pinky up to the 9th fret. It's taken a lot of practice for me to get used to that. And kind of turn it around this way so you can see, like, how, I mean, I'm collapsing my pinky in a way that I shouldn't be now that I'm looking at the screen, but, right? And one piece that I wrote that I'm really excited about is another study piece, study number 3, which is called Celeste, which you guys probably heard back in the live stream in December, which explores arpeggios. So we got a major arpeggio there. Then I'm gonna go to an F sharp minor arpeggio. Then a D major arpeggio starting on the 5th string. D major 9. Oops. And then an A major arpeggio starting on the 5th string. This is where I start making musical choices, because this isn't technically an A major 9 arpeggio all the way up, but I wanted that little lick to move. Then getting into a G major 9. All kinds of stuff like that. So when you're writing new music, generally, and I think you were mostly asking me about lettered streets, and I kind of got into a composition tangent, but generally comes down to rhythm for me, and what I've been trying to do more often recently is explore more harmony and sort of fretboard theory and technique, and that's been opening a lot of really cool doors for me. All right, well, you guys, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to throw them out there now. Again, if you guys like what you saw here tonight, go check out my website and my Instagram. Go check out Nick Taylor and Bellinghome School of Music. I'm so grateful to them, and Nick especially, for throwing this together for me tonight. And if you're a musician or a local artist here in Bellingham, teacher or whatever, and you feel really excited about the quality of this video, hit up Nick and do a live stream here, guys. It's super duper fun. A lot of really cool people here, real easy going, low stress. And, like I said, if you're interested in reading those tabs, feel free to drop a $10 donation in the donation bucket at paypal.me/Jacob Seyer Guitar. It would really help support Nick in what he's doing here, and would help support me in what I'm doing in my place. So I guess that's kind of it, y'all. I think it's been really fun. And
end it with the tune, maybe?
Yeah. Let's try something.
Any new ones in the works?
Yeah, I
Put you
do.
on the spot, ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Howard. I actually got to think about this for a second, because I do, but I'm heated up now. I got to think about it, you know? So you've heard this one, you've heard that one, you've heard... Oh, do I have any full new ones for you? I don't think I'm ready for that yet. Don't think I'm ready for the new ones. I'm going to start playing Mothership. You guys know that one, and I'm going to see if any other new ones pop into my head. Oh, I do have a new one. I do. I'm going to have to get a capo. Give me just a second. I'll be right back. I'm actually pretty excited about this one. I just couldn't think of which one it was. I was like, I think I have one. Stay tuned. So maybe some of you who have listened to my music before are familiar with my set of meditation pieces. There are 3 of them out now, and I'm currently working on a 4th one, and I'm really excited to kind of show you what that one sounds like. Follows similar thematic structures. That's when I was really heavily into classical theme and variation. And, excuse me. So I'll just try this one out. I actually haven't played this one in a while, so it might not be totally full, but let's see if we can do it. Something like that. Thank you all so much. Oh, so happy. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you all have a good night.